It's Monday, the 19th of April. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and a quick couple of updates on the recent loss of the TBM Avenger at the Cocoa Beach Air Show in Florida over this weekend. First off, a little more information on how the air show at Cocoa Beach itself works. The Cocoa Beach Air Show is a neat and kind of unique air show venue in that the air show takes place just off of the beach of Cocoa Beach. So the FAA sets up special use airspace which allows aerobatic flying, and that box, that piece of airspace is about 2 miles long, stretching the length of the coast, offset from the spectators an appropriate amount, and has an altitude restriction of about 200 feet to about 10,000 feet. And the reason the Cocoa Beach Air Show goes on the same time as Sun and Fun is that when you get big name performers like the F-22 Raptor, for example, I see he's performing in both of these shows, so they can quickly and easily move from one air show to the other while they're in the area. In between air show acts, you'll get these parades of flight that make a formation flyby down the beach inside the box, and will do a left-hand orbit flying from north to south, and do a left-hand orbit and give the spectators several flybys of their formation aircraft. And on Saturday, part of that air show routine was the Valiant Air Command, who fielded 4 aircraft, the B-25, their Tico Bell DC-3, the TBM Avenger, and a Boeing Stearman biplane. So the formation departs their local airport there and then orbits near the area, forming up their formation and waiting for their time slot before they enter the box in the approved airspace, and then make a series of passes from north to south in front of the spectators, offset from the beach. And as I talked about in the first briefing, this entire thing is carefully choreographed and pre-briefed in advance. And here at the Cocoa Beach Air Show, they've got 2 excellent emergency airfields, one to the north and one to the south. Cape Canaveral, the huge space shuttle airport to the north of Cocoa Beach, and Patrick Air Force Base just to the south of Cocoa Beach, where this air show was being performed. So we got some new pictures today from one of the aircraft in the formation that I'm allowed to show you today, and it's from the B-25 that was in the formation, and it's gonna open up some of the questions that investigators are going to want to be looking at during this accident investigation, in which fortunately nobody was hurt this time. Now, in the B-25 pictures, you can see smoke trailing from the B-25 while it appears that they were still on a northbound track up at altitude, getting ready to enter the air show box. If you've been in the air show business for a while, I used to race biplanes up at the Reno Air Races, and been going to air show for years. And just like in civilian flying, where we've got this get there-itis issue comes up from time to time, sometimes in the air show business, there's a little bit of the show must go on kind of thinking. And so investigators are going to be looking at that because, and another point, on these warbirds with the big radial engines, in this case the Wright 2600 engine, oftentimes these engine problems develop, and it's not right away noticeable to the pilot unless he's really able to hear what's going on with the engine. In other words, if the engine starts smoking, you don't see it as the pilot right away. It's usually the other aircraft in the formation that spots that smoke first. This is why at the Reno Air Races, for example, Bob Hoover always was right there watching everything all the time, and he's a wingman effectively, and he's able to help you make a decision as to what to do with your aircraft if he spots trouble with your aircraft before you do. And that's often how you spot the beginning of troubles with these old radial engines, is a trail of smoke coming out from behind the engine. Why it's failing, we don't know, but something's going on. And then investigators are going to want to look at the communication that was going on between the crews at that time. And often during these air shows, the radio communication, the comms between everybody, gets very, very busy because there's an air boss on the frequency trying to coordinate all these aircrafts and flights into the area. So investigators are going to want to be looking at what did they know and when did you know it, so to speak, and what was the communications like between crew members, and what was the decision process like once the smoke was spotted coming out of the TBM. because it appears to me, looking at these pictures from the B-25, that they're very near the the Cape Canaveral runway, and could have possibly easily diverted into the Cape Canaveral before things went further south. And once these radial engines start going, they don't just, well, sometimes they often just quit all of a sudden, but often they'll slowly deteriorate. And so once a problem starts, it's likely not to get any better. Now, this particular TBM, in fact, it might be one I'm fairly familiar with, as this was one of the TBMs that came out of the California Division of Forestry years ago. CDF, California, we used to fly TBM single-engine air tankers, and as a result of engine failures of these Wright 2600s back in the 60s and 70s, CAL FIRE, or CDF at the time, said no more single-engine air tankers, and that's why we still have a no single-engine air tanker on contract policy in California today. It was because of these TBMs from years ago. Now, recently this TBM had been restored, and I believe the engine was overhauled. Engine overhauls on radial engines come in a variety of shapes and sizes, so investigators are going to want to look at the extent of the overhaul on this engine. Right away, the first thing they'll do is pull the oil screen out of the bottom of the engine and see if it's full of metal, and determine what the condition of the engine was when it failed. And as far as overhauls go, they're going to want to look and see, was this a complete overhaul of the entire engine? Was it a top overhaul where they just rebuild the cylinders and leave the bottom end alone? And also during this overhaul process, did they replace all the hoses associated with the engine as well? So if investigators go down that track, they may go so far as to look at the organization of the Valiant Air Command. It's an all-volunteer warbird museum that keeps these aircraft flying, and they're run by a board of directors, and so they'll need to look at the finances of the whole thing, if they even bother to go that far. It could be just a simple engine failure and that's it, end of story, move on down the line. But they're also going to be scrutinizing how close was the pilot to the beach when he ditched this aircraft. The aircraft was successfully recovered off of the beach by dragging it off the beach tail first, and as typical with most of these salvage operations, often more damage is done during the salvage operation than the actual ditching itself. Regardless, the aircraft was completely soaked in salt water. I think this aircraft will be relegated to static display after this incident. So regardless of the outcome of this, lessons learned for all of us to be reminded of is divert early, beat the rush. Mechanical issues typically do not tend to get better as time goes on. Declare the emergency, get the thing on the ground sooner rather than later. Thanks so much for your support. We'll see you here. Here's those pictures from the B-25. I got to get on a smoker and get on home. See you here.